the exercise of their functions relating to land under any enactment, every public body shall have regard to the desirability of conserving the natural beauty and amenity of the countryside.
Every day, millions of rail passengers pass heathland, hedgerow, hills and vales in countryside and conurbation. Perhaps without even giving the environment a second thought. Railways are green arterial routes spanning the country. They are also a refuge for wildlife and a passage for its movement. British Rail is one of the largest landowners in the UK, responsible for 11,000 miles of route, which is 22,000 miles of lineside. That's an estimated 75,000 acres of land immediately adjacent to the track. This land forms corridors, strips of vegetation between the tracks and the railway boundary fence. Some broad and some narrow, an integral part of the rural and the urban scene. Because these corridors are private land which has been fenced off in many cases for well over a century, they are protected environments for flora and fauna, natural habitats, playing an important role in the preservation of our countryside. Since the introduction of steam locomotives 150 years ago, the lineside environment has been managed according to the evolution of the railways. In the early days, controlling and managing the lineside was labour-intensive, with local gangs keeping the cuttings and embankments clear of any vegetation that could become a fire hazard. In the late 1960s, as steam gave way to diesel and electric traction, allowing this labour-intensive control of linesides to become less of a priority, mechanised techniques substituted for gangs of men. Improved technology encouraged blanket solutions, such as the extensive use of flailing machines and herbicides to control plant growth. The need for cutting back beyond the immediate lineside became unnecessary. The changing economic climate required maintenance to be limited to areas immediately adjacent to the running lines. In other areas where vegetation had been allowed to mature naturally, trees were collapsing and dying, coppice stools aging and rotting, forced trees and invasive woodland becoming tall, spindly and susceptible to wind throw. For well over 10 years, British Rail has been working closely in partnership with local authorities and communities throughout the country. These schemes have included an extensive programme of improvement to rail corridors. This has been of great benefit both to the railway and to the partners involved.
We have looked to form partnerships. In the case of Hampshire, we, in British Rail, have formed a partnership with the Hampshire County Council, with English Nature, with the Countryside Commission, to put together a prototype project which will develop a coordinated and environmentally sound approach to the management of all our lineside areas.
Hampshire County Council recognised the great asset potential of its rail corridors and sought a means of working with British Rail to improve the environment, particularly in urban areas, as part of a longer-term strategy.
British Rail is such a major participant in the environment in Hampshire. If we can work with them, and if we can both do what we feel is necessary, then everything goes ahead much more quickly. And instead of it being a bit artificial, you have one great big scheme or one beautiful thing you do, and then you all go home. It's a continuous process in Hampshire, and that's what I think we all feel is so important. We no longer have to get worried that every time the British Rail carry out a construction job, they're going to destroy everything. We can sit back at home and knowing, in fact, they will be improving things perhaps better than we would.
Thus it was with a view to developing a modern management policy for rail lineside vegetation that a pilot project was initiated in Hampshire in 1987. The project, the first of its kind, aimed to assess how British Rail should manage widely differing types of lineside vegetation, ranging from heathland to mature woodland, in a cost-effective and sympathetic way. It was commissioned jointly by British Rail's Community Unit, Hampshire County Council, the Countryside Commission and the then Nature Conservancy Council, now English Nature, who formed the project steering group.
To the Commission, the Hampshire project is extremely important in that it's breaking new ground in a sense. We don't know an awful lot about how one should manage line-side land on either side of a railway track. And so we're developing techniques to provide a better management, and we hope in due course that this can be applied generally throughout the country.
There are fundamental reasons why linesides need to be managed correctly. Tree felling avoids the possibility of major accidents. Maintenance minimises costly delays and disruption caused by leaf fall in the autumn, when acceleration and braking capacity of trains can be undermined. Intelligent tree management decreases the likelihood of damage to embankments, structures and equipment. Small shrubs can reduce vortex problems and trap fallen leaves, so improving the safety of lineside walking routes. Foliage control gives drivers better sighting for signals and potential hazards. Positive environmental work helps to sustain the quality of service and reliability to the customer. And most importantly, it eliminates risk, helping to ensure that passengers can travel in safety.
You'll come into the springtime when everything is coming into blossom, trees, foliage, and they're growing. And as they grow, they do obscure signals. If it's obscured a signal and you can't see it, then to a driver that is a danger signal. And that means he has to slow down, possibly stop, until such times that he can see what colour signals he's got.
The Hampshire team included a project officer, a foreman and 6 estate workers. The project officer, Paul Knipe, had extensive experience of conservation projects and had already been involved in liaison work on British Rail's behalf. His first task was to identify various trial areas on which to develop the best ways of managing the different types of vegetation. He carried out comprehensive surveys, using specially designed forms highlighting the areas of landscape and conservation importance, in order to recommend specific management of these sites. In many places, vegetation had been allowed to mature naturally, and the legacy of the policy of non-intervention showed. Embankments and cuttings were also becoming susceptible to erosion. A scientific approach was adopted in order to analyse the results in both qualitative and quantitative terms. At Southampton University, a detailed study of all green corridors within Southampton City was programmed into the university's computer database as part of a wider ecological survey. Throughout the project, the focus was on sound land management, with practical constraints and long-term cost benefits being of prime concern.
We've tried to use a very pragmatic approach so that we're not sort of asking British Rail to carry out a lot of what might seem peripheral sort of actions, but they actually tie into the everyday running of the railway, and it does benefit the running of trains in the end.
Paul Knipe studied in detail the main urban areas: Basingstoke, the Blackwater Valley, Winchester, Southampton, Fareham area and Portsmouth.
11 vegetation types were identified, and each site was set up as a demonstration and control site. The sites were placed in order of priority. First on safety, then conservation, then landscape. High priority was given to sites with heavy leaf fall, and to sites with over-mature and potentially hazardous trees. A planned approach to management was adopted, using good forestry practice, mechanical flailing, coppicing, thinning and felling.
One of the first practical tasks of the project was to establish a tree nursery here at Winchester. This is very important because we're able to raise our own cuttings and seeds, and it also allows us to carry out planting at short notice when perhaps we get complaints from residents or members of the public that suddenly have their views opened up to the line.
I think that too much was taken further up, that if it had been perhaps left like this, I think personally that it would have been a lot better.
So we were grateful to be approached. We liked the way the exercise was done. The finished article is never perfect. If we'd had a chance to tailor-make it, we would have probably asked for a bit more here and a bit less there, and some trees have gone, not at the back of our garden, but very near, which are important, which we'd have liked to have seen left. But overall, I think that it was a thoughtful and caring exercise, and I'm glad it was done.
Left to their own devices, these trees get rather large, and we did have that October 87 storm, and so one's naturally a bit concerned with the southwesters coming over that way, lest a tree might come down, but that's only occasionally that sort of thing could occur, but obviously it needs management to avoid trouble of that kind.
What we've had prepared is something quite grandly called a tree matrix, which lists all the trees and shrubs that we've found in Hampshire on the Lineside and all the important factors that affect how those trees and shrubs grow, such as soil type, how far away they are located away from the track, the landscape setting, and safety considerations, which are extremely important. And we've prepared this one in a poster format, which hopefully will be used as a practical guide for the gangs as to how to manage the trees and shrubs in their particular area.
From the Hampshire project, it has been possible to make recommendations for a planned vegetation policy for rail linesides that will deliver practical benefits. These benefits include improvement to the driver's visibility and sighting of signals, improved safety for trackside maintenance staff and travellers alike, reduced risk of unstable trees and branches falling on the rails, reduced maintenance costs by minimising damage caused by leaf fall, reduced costs from emergency call-outs due to a programme of planned felling, embankments and cuttings stabilised by healthier vegetation, better public relations and public awareness achieved simply by a planned approach to informing residents when work on the Lineside is to be carried out, cleared debris, improving drainage and reducing the risk of flooding, and the rail environment being greatly improved for travellers and communities alike. These improvements will contribute to a healthier, more efficient rail business. But these benefits can only accrue if a long-term plan is adopted.
In environmental matters, it's all too easy to let emotion cloud objective judgment. While British Rail is always concerned to act responsibly towards the environment, our first responsibility is to run a safe and efficient railway. The Hampshire project has been of great value in taking a cool, balanced look at the issues and in coming up with a set of practical recommendations that recognise not only the environmental and ecological arguments, but also the financial and technical realities of business economics. We are now working closely with our project partners to develop firm, realistic guidelines for managing our Lineside estate in the future. And we're ready to cooperate with responsible organisations outside the railway who are prepared to work constructively in partnership with us to achieve those higher standards we all seek.
The point about British Rail's Lineside Vegetation project is that it's a public and a very public thing. It is a vital part of the county's whole programme of urban regeneration, but it runs right through the county, and represents to many of the travelling public of Hampshire and its visitors the face of Hampshire's commitment to nature conservation and to the landscape.
The work carried out in Hampshire will provide a model for better vegetation management, improving the environment and maintaining safety standards. It is not a short-term goal. It is ongoing and will foster better relationships with the community as well as enhance perceptions of the rail network across the country as a whole. The study has established better, more cost-effective and more environmentally sensitive techniques, providing a basis for better training of lineside staff, supervisors and managers. British Rail is developing a policy of vegetation management that is both coordinated and environmentally sound. By working in a constructive way with its partners, British Rail now aims to extend this policy to all 22,000 miles of lineside. In fact, 2 other areas in the country are already pursuing Hampshire's lead. It is hoped that many others will follow.
Certainly, as far as I'm concerned, what goes on in the embankment is more important than our own garden, really.